It's time to deal with combine fallout. Who is rising and who is falling? Tonight on the Football Guys College Football Show.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the College Football Show here at Football Guys. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, leave a comment below. Let us know, what do you think of Jeff's gray hair? You know, we're available on all these platforms out here as well. We're going to be diving into, like Jeff talked about, the combine. There's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of fun going on there. We'd be remiss not to mention that we have our rookie guide coming out, and we already had the first edition. We're going to have 2.0 for you guys at some point this week. We're kind of finishing up final touches. So if you are a Football Guys subscriber, you will get version 2.0. In it, we have updated draft capital. We have updated player cards. We have so many player cards. I don't know off the top of my head how many player cards we got in there, but I think it's pushing over 130, I think. And then also, like, looking at RAS score, so relative athletic score, we're going into that. That is going to be included in the guide, and always our player comps, which are a lot of fun to kind of debate, talk about, look at like who we want there. So that is coming out. So Rookie Guide 2.0. We're excited about this edition. Going to be a little bit minor touches and stuff in there. So be a Football Guys subscriber. Go get in there. Get in there. If you're not a Football Guys subscriber, I don't know what you're doing. I guess you like to lose. But if you want to win, go jump in there and get on that. So let's get in the combine. Jeff, this is okay. So we're going to start with a boomer take. Jeff's got a boomer take on the show sheet. This one. No one tested. Jeff is upset because everybody doesn't, a lot of guys skipped. So they kind of looked and they said, hey, and this is the old ways. They did everything. Like every drill out there, you see them doing. Now we see some guys that skipped, right? So what do you think about this, Jeff? And like most notable guys that skipped, a lot of the running backs skipped a lot of the 40 and some of the work. Like the running back was kind of underwhelming. But what is our takeaway from this? Are we looking down on these guys better? What are we going here?
Well, from my point of view, I think what you see is guys practice and then they go out and do the one or two things that they're very good at, and they want to make sure that they don't end their stock at the combine. They'll go out, and if they're jumping high, then they'll go out and jump the vertical to see where they come in on that. Or if they're running well in practice, they'll go out and run the 40. And if they're not exactly where they want to be, or maybe if you're a certain quarterback that put on 25 pounds in order to hit a number on the scale, and you just decide you're not going to do anything, then you're kind of left with an unsatisfied taste. And I think that where the combine used to be, just you'd get this whole athletic picture of all these players, and maybe some players did poorly and maybe some players did well, more above expectations. They would have another chance at pro day to either solidify numbers or kind of erase bad numbers, and you would end up with a whole athletic profile. And we mentioned RAS at the beginning of the show, and taking a step back, peeling back here, Kentley Platt at MathBomb on Twitter. Fantastic follow. Make sure that you're following him. What relative athletic score is taking this whole picture of between, you've got the 40 time, you've got the 3-cone, you've got the shuttle, you've got the vertical jump, you've got the broad jump, you've got the size of players. And what Kent does is he puts these into a band of metrics of, a low 4.3 might be a 10 flat, 10 score between 0 and 10. A 4.3 flat might be a 10, and a 4.6 might be a 0, and they place players within that. You build up an athletic profile, and that gives you a good idea where players are tested. Kent's website's fantastic. You can do comps on there, and it was something that really made the weekend a lot of fun. When you don't get that whole athletic profile, then you're kind of picking bits and pieces. And right now you're kind of picking the best parts of bits and pieces, but what's waiting to be shown? What are we going to see, or what are we not going to see at all? Because I would argue a guy like Jackson Smith-Njigba had a great combine to show his athleticism, but he didn't run the 40. And I'd question now, is he going to run the 40 at all? Does he have to do that? And that's just one of the things. It's just frustrating not to gain more of a picture and get that whole data.
Yeah. So I get it from that perspective. And as an evaluator and someone that, I really like having that true athleticism, I have incorporated relative athletic score into my grading scale with how I grade prospects. And now I've kind of as I'm looking through, even college football players, I'm trying to project what their relative athletic score is going to be. When we don't get the full picture, it's not discouraging or anything like that. It's a bummer. We still have to project, right? On the other side of things, I understand why these guys are doing that. I understand that if you're going to run a slow 40 that could potentially impact your draft stock, that's money. That's money in your pocket that you're kind of throwing away. And if you're aware of it as it's happening, I think that it's kind of a smart decision. And these guys are being advised by their teams and by their agents and everyone around them on what to do. It is, once again, a bummer. I think I like to say, well, I won't have any bias against the guys that didn't do all the testing. But then I look at a guy like Evan Hull in the running back group who did literally everything. And Chase Brown, too, I think did oh, no, Chase didn't do his agilities, did he? There are guys that when they do everything, I look at that with a positive lens, because those guys want to go out, they want to compete, they want to show off. And there are some guys, Tavion Thomas is an example of a guy who did not test well, but he went out there and he did a lot of the things. And I think that you can put some respect on those guys that do want to go out there, have a good time and compete. There's a larger conversation about what the NFL Combine is. And, there have been discussions about getting rid of the Combine in general and just moving it to pro days. But that's never going to happen because the NFL makes a lot of money off the Combine. So, and we enjoy watching it. And viewership was way up this year because they flipped the skill positions to Saturday and Sunday, and it was awesome. And I enjoyed watching it. But I get why these guys might pass on things that could impact their draft stock, I guess.
Yeah, I want to show you guys like the Raz cards too for like comparison. So if you're listening on the podcast, go to the YouTube channel, find us on Footballguys so you can see this. But this is like the comparison for Anthony Richardson. So he tested as one of the highest. We're going to talk about his debut at the Combine and what he did. And this is compared to Cam Newton. So this is a good kind of baseline for it. And in the rookie guide, we had this comparison. We said, hey, this is kind of his ceiling. This is what he could be. And when you go through it, you'll see everything, 40-yard dash and all that. And I think really the RAS score for me is like, you need to be a great athlete to be a great football player for most part of it. It's like, it's a simple thing. Christian knows much more than I do, but I am dumb enough to know that you need to be a good athlete to be in the NFL. And I think it helps, right? And experience to be for certain positions. This is one that we had for Bijan, and we compared him to Edgerrin James and ours. And you look at it, the numbers are very close. So when you're looking at, hey, and again, all these things are fluid. And when we do comps like this, it's more about just like having fun with it, understanding maybe where his ceiling is. You kind of tie in like play type and standards, but it's really close. Like when you're looking at just overall, what these guys do on the field, and you look at like what other players have done in the past, it's a good comparison. It's a lot of fun to do. Like you can compare anybody in terms of if they tested, and you see that card. It's about putting the whole profile together. So like what I like to talk about is like essentially you're putting your whole profile together, and then you can just make an informed opinion based on that player. And it's all the little pieces, right? You're not just looking at analytics, you're not looking at film. It's all the pieces. That's where I look at Raz.
Yeah, and I do want to say too, it's a lot of what I use it for. What I look at, I think there's a minimum bar that you want to see. And if a guy clears that bar, you feel like, okay, he's athletic enough that he can play in the NFL. Whereas like right now, early in the process, through the process, I'm looking for disqualifiers, guys that I can just scratch off the list that I'm just not going to be interested in. And like Kayshon Boutte is a player that, he struggled this season. He came in with a lot of hype, and we play Devi. We talk about Devi through the summer. Stay with us and we'll talk about the players coming in. He was a player that was high on almost every single list. Really struggled this year, and then he went out in the Combine and just had a terrible performance. And so his athletic score came in very low, and it's a player. It's once you start stacking things on top, you're just not going to be interested in taking that player. And I think that a lot of what you're doing, especially if you're drafting early, you're just trying to get on base. You're trying to hit a double, get on base. Just don't strike out. Don't be, Malik Willis last year was going at the 101, 102, and if you had that pick and you had an early draft, that was a strikeout, and you're already flushing that rookie down. And if you're a bad enough team that you're in position that you earn that puts you even further behind that ball. And so right now we're just trying to get you on base, and we're trying to see what players we can eliminate, because through the process last year, Kyron Williams was very high coming into the Combine. We eliminated him. David Bell was a player that from athletic testing, we moved far down the board because it just didn't feel comfortable, and you're just not getting the production from those players. They were drafted later than expectations, and there have been disappointments. And so right now we're trying to avoid those disappointments through this process.
Just really quickly, last note too, this stuff does translate to performance on NFL fields too. I think I saw a stat. I'm not certain who tweeted it out. So if you know who, drop it in the comments, please. But 98% of top 12 tight ends had a relative athletic score above 6 over the last, I believe, 10 years. And Kent's database has all that dating back into I think as far back as the 80s and 90s. I think it goes pretty far back for when we have testing numbers. So, but over the last 10 years, the tight end position is one that you need to be an athlete. Luckily, we don't have that problem this year because all of the dudes were insane athletes. But there are times, Trey McBride even last year he was on the verge of, maybe being one of those guys that we had to cut off as a potential not athletic enough player. He did make it over the threshold, but there's an importance to this stuff, and it is important to know what type of athlete these guys are for sure.
Let's just make it clear. You can go so far back. It's guys that Jeff watched in like high school. Like you can go all the way back there, and dudes Jeff Bell watched in high school are on this database, so that it's deep. There's deep guys there. All right, let's dive into the show. Anthony Richardson. Whoo, he had a fun combine, boys, and for everybody there, I'm going to throw up his razz as well. Like overall, just looking at what he did, like 4.40. You have that 20-yard split was great. Height, weight, obviously he's if you built the perfect prospect in terms of what the quarterback should look like, 6'4", 244. His vertical 40 inches, which that's just insane. Broad was amazing. Like 1009. Like you're looking at what he's able to put up there. What was your takeaway from Richardson? Because I'm going to be honest, like we're going to hear a lot of things about Richardson. Like people are talking about him from a fantasy perspective 101, and then people are saying, oh, he's still Malik. And then we see these weird like divides between a lot of people, a lot of pushback. But even like mainstream guys, like you have like Move the Sticks podcast, what we listen to, they say, hey, it could be easily 101. And then I listened to some other podcasts today, and they said, well, the only two I think have a shot are CJ and Bryce to be first rounders, not even first round, like top 10. This is like real dudes talking about like Richardson. There's still question marks. And then you have Zerloin going out there and saying no one really said he did well in interviews. So like we're hearing all kinds of stuff, noise. But overall, what do you take away from his performance, Jeff?
It's a complicated conversation because, and if Malik Willis hadn't happened, I feel like we would all collectively be moving in one direction. When I break it down, when I look at the upside, there is not another quarterback in this class that has the upside, and he has an upside to be a quarterback one, a top 10, top 12 quarterback in fantasy football. And so in my mind, I'm thinking that if you're playing in a one quarterback dynasty league, I almost think he should be quarterback one if you're in a one quarterback league, just because the value that he can bring you over the other guys is worth it in a one quarterback league, in one quarterback format. Whereas if you're playing in a super flex format where you need to be slightly more safer, I think early at the top. And I think that CJ Stroud and Bryce Young are probably those safer players. Though I think if Richardson's on the field, if he's a franchise quarterback, he's got the highest fantasy floor. And I think that that's something that people don't understand, don't look at, and look at Justin Fields. And Justin Fields, we're concerned about his passing, concerned about his teammate. He's still a great fantasy quarterback. And so he's got a very high fantasy floor. And so even if Anthony Richardson doesn't have that developed passing that you want to see as part of a franchise quarterback, he still has a very safe, very high fantasy floor if he's on the field. And so it's hard for me. I think it's hard for almost everybody to move him above Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, especially just off this performance. We knew he was athletic coming in. We did not know he was going to be the most athletic quarterback in NFL history, essentially, coming out of this performance. And so that's one big thing to circle there. But it is worth noting that NFL offense has gotten so much smarter about using the ability of these quarterbacks and allowing them to flourish, allowing them to focus on their strengths. And so while Richardson doesn't have all the developmental tools that you want to see out of passing, he's still playable. And that's really what you're looking for in fantasy. Although being just 1 year in college, he might not get that right away.
Yeah, I think that's an important note, though, that he is the most athletic quarterback of all time. There's no, obviously some of those numbers are still technically unofficial. If he goes through things at Pro Day, those numbers might adjust, but I don't think that they're going to adjust to a worse time. So as of right now, he is the most athletic quarterback of all time. more than Cam Newton, who I believe had the top spot. And that's why, the 10, he gets the 10 score, Cam gets the 999 on relative athletic score. But that's an important note. And while, yes, he does have things to work out, and yes, it was very clear how much more accurate CJ Stroud is than him at this current moment. On the other side of things, CJ Stroud has played a lot of football. He has played a lot more football than Anthony Richardson. Richardson has only gotten 13 starts in college football. And you see the body of work. You see a lot of the good things on his film. There are talks that this kid will potentially be the first overall pick. I think right now, CJ Stroud should be in the mix. I think Bryce Young might be in the mix, but I consume a lot of draft analysis, and a lot of the talk coming out of Indianapolis this weekend was that Bryce Young is QB2 and QB3 for some teams simply because of the size factor, which I know we'll talk about here in a second. But there is a non-zero chance that Anthony Richardson is a locked-in top 5 pick, and I think right now his floor is 7. I don't think he gets past the 7th overall pick. The Malik Willis stuff, I still don't get it. I just there's so much more to work with Richardson at such a younger age, and it's just we'll see how the discourse goes. We've got a lot of time between now and the draft, and this could be the favorite to be the first overall pick now partly because of this combine performance.
I think the Malik thing is more. So I kind of pride myself on being just a dude. Like I'm not like in terms of analysts and smart analytical people and those type of guys, like I'll never be in that category. So I'm never going to be in the smart category like these guys. But like when I talk to like my friends and people who like play fantasy, but they're not in like dynasty circles, they're like, yeah, we missed on Malik, but we'll take a shot on Anthony. He's freaking see that guy. That is how like they look. And even someone who I trust very much, he's someone that plays fantasy just like all of us. He's just not an analyst. He's like, yeah, I take him at the 101 because I'm okay with taking a shot on the ceiling. And I think that's how you have to look in this. I think it's some things it gets like, weirdly with analysts, they did take things too personal. They missed on Malik. Now they're hesitant. It's like, well, hey, when you look at what the value is of that position and what these guys can bring, I think that's what Richardson brings, right? Like, but to just point, like in Superflex, you gotta be a little bit more careful with that concept because these guys value way more. One quarterback, yeah, why not? Take 105, you're sitting there, there's a big tier break, or 106, you're like, I'll take a shot there. But in Superflex, yeah, you do have to be there. A lot of things are going to come out of this, but I'm telling you right now, he better not do anything at his pro day. Dude, just throw. Yeah. Maybe. Don't even just
board session.
High. Little throwing session. Get some dump offs. You don't need to do too much.
Here's the thing, though. If he goes out and has one of those pro days where we're like, wow, look at him run to the left and throw across his body because he's got that in his bag, then the conversation changes. Would that happen with Zach Wilson? And so while he could be more inaccurate, that's a controlled environment where the combine was not as controlled. So I think go throw, don't get on a track, and don't do any jumps. But you're done. You did it. Congrats.
I do think it's kind of funny. I will say this is like I've seen some analysts that like they are very harsh of Willis, but then like Zach Wilson was their quarterback 1. And I get the draft capital was different, but it's the same thing. Like it's the same concept. Hey, you fell in love with the tool. One guy said, hey, Mahomes. No, it wasn't. And then we're back in this one. So like, I think that you have to separate the two. I just think it's more nuanced than that. Like, and yeah, I'm not gonna go any further. I'm gonna get fired. All right, let's go to Bryce Young. Bryce Young, 5'10-ish, little over, right? 204, I think is where he came in at. He's not going to be over 200 when he plays. But, hey, that boy put on some weight. I'm proud of you. So what do we think of Bryce? We kind of mentioned him already. Like, I assumed he was 5'10 anyway. Like, that's what I said. It's like, as long as he's 5'10, I'm okay. I know there's some talk about, like, athleticism. Like, everybody uses Kyler. Listen, in my opinion, Bryce is a way better quarterback than Kyler Murray. Like in terms of his profile, what he can do with the football. Yeah, like this might be. So are we in like a weird discussion of where like Bryce is a pretty damn good football player, but from fantasy, you're looking at maybe not as high a ceiling because he doesn't have that rushing and maybe he's not as athletic, Jeff? Or like you're the noted Bryce Young hater. So I want to hear your opinion before we fight.
Noted Bryce Young hater. No,
That's
I wouldn't.
that's your new title. Jeff Bell for whom Bryce Young hates, or something like that. We're gonna do something like that.
Well, I think when we're playing Dynasty with that size, longevity has to be a question, because as much as we talk about Kyler Murray and Kyler Murray being a better athlete, Kyler Murray hasn't been able to stay on the field. And he's certainly not built like Russell Wilson. And so he's going to have to be.
But Kyler runs. Bryce isn't going to do that.
Okay. So he's not going to run. Then you don't have a running quarterback. And that already is going to push you back. So it's kind of
CJ doesn't run. What are we talking about here? CJ doesn't run. Just because he's you height elitist because he's over 5'10", yes. You're like, hey,
yes, I am an elitist when it comes to.
But it's the same ceiling we're talking about, right? Isn't that the same thing?
Yeah, I think they're very comparable ceiling, and I think that they're valued comparably. And I think that it's splitting hairs to have one or the other. I believe, I had a poll yesterday, like, do you believe that Bryce Young is a tier above? Because I've certainly seen enough out there that to believe that some people do, and it came in about 15 to 20% people believe that Bryce Young is a tier above CJ Stroud, and I'm not there on that. I don't think that's the case at all. But again, it's it's a double-edged sword. Is he going to be a runner? If he's going to be a runner, is he going to be available? If he's not going to be a runner, then he's not an elite level quarterback. And when it comes to fantasy football, and that's really what you're dealing with. And he's going to have to learn. He's going to have to be Drew Brees. He's going to have to be accurate. He's going to have to read quickly. He's going to have to be in pockets that are moved around. And CJ Stroud has to do those things at an NFL level like any quarterback does, but there's not the accommodations built into the game for CJ Stroud that are going to have to be built in for Bryce Young. And that's the biggest thing that I'm looking at it from. I think that there are easier paths to success for CJ Stroud than for Bryce Young. I think Bryce Young needs to thread the eye of the needle, whereas CJ Stroud has a little bit more leeway, a little bit more landing space to still be a useful asset for you in fantasy. But again, it really just boils down to, if he's not a runner, then you have a quarterback that's not a runner. And if he is, then I have questions about his longevity and his availability. Because we saw him hurt in college. I mean, that's the thing too. We saw him hurt in college.
Yeah. So I think, separating this entire discussion from them, Young versus Stroud, because I don't think that I don't see the point in this. And we kind of had a conversation about this. I may have said it on the show a couple weeks ago. They're in the tier together. And what that tier is I take a look at the current top 12 quarterbacks in fantasy football and in the NFL, and I say, do these two have a shot to be better than any of these guys? And I struggle to get there. I think they're good prospects. I don't think, there's a reason that there's so much ambiguity at the top of the NFL draft this year. And that's because no prospect has stood out as the clear top guy, maybe even like Trevor Lawrence, even though Justin Fields, I still liked him more. That looks wrong currently, but we haven't even had that type of discussion. And this is a strong quarterback draft. I did air quotes. It was off the screen. But it's a strong quarterback relative to last year, because last year was such a bad quarterback class that we are just all fiending for good, maybe above average quarterbacks. I don't see elite potential out of either of these guys for fantasy or for the NFL. And I think that when we talk about this quarterback class, we've kind of gotten sucked into, oh my gosh, look at how great they are. And they are good players. It's just, I think we need to temper those expectations once again, because there are elite players in this class for fantasy. It's just, I think your best shot at elite might be that guy that we talked about with the 10 relative athletic score earlier. That's your guy that can be a top tier fantasy asset, and then the other guys are safer and they can be back end ones. But once again, back to Bryce, he's not going to play at 204. I think that matters, because I do think that once again, we've talked about it a lot, but that it's even different from the SEC. He's going to take big hits, and he's a gamer, and we're going to see how much of a gamer he can be. So
go ahead, Jeff.
I think we need to talk about Will Levis, though, because as much as we've been on team fade Will Levis and everything else, I did a Football Guys mock draft that's going to be published. I got him to 112 in Superflex, and I'm also in a Football Guys 14 team startup draft that we're doing right now, and quarterbacks flew off the board there, and I got him at the beginning of the 7th round in that draft. So it's kind of crazy the fade that's going on with Will Levis, because you're putting guys like Zay Flowers ahead of Will Levis and Josh Towns ahead of Will Levis, I'm seeing, and that boggles my mind, because I just think that as much as concerns as you have on Will Levis, I still think he's probably going to be a top 10 pick, and he's got physical athletic tools, and he might have a better ceiling than when it comes to fantasy than Bryce Young or CJ Stroud, as much as he's got risk involved in that ceiling. And so I do think that as much as we've been on team fade Will Levis, I think the hate has gone too far. And maybe that's a player that people need to see that landing spot, need to see that draft capital, need to see him picked there to move him back up. But it's just, he has got so much more upside than the other players around him in Superflex formats where he's getting drafted right now. And it's interesting to me that, I think that if there's a Justin Herbert that's being faded too far by fantasy right now, it's Will Levis.
You heard it here first. Jeff Bell just called Will Levis Justin Herbert. Okay, so I want everybody to put that. We got Devin. Get on the graphics, Devin. We're going to be putting that out tomorrow so that we can get more canceled. That's what we do here on the show. No, I mean, I took Levis in a startup with these idiots, and a 705 as my QB2. And I think you just can't get past the draft capital, right? I think if he's going to go in the first round, I think he has insulated value for at least 2 years. And then look what Daniel Jones did. Now Daniel Jones just got a contract extension, and you're like, hey, I'll take him. Like Daniel Jones last year, what in Superflex was going where? 12th, 13th round? I don't know. It was pretty late. I don't know how late it got.
It was 9th or 10th, I think.
Oh, just always have to one up me. Okay, but yeah, somewhere around there.
Be a little bit more accurate than you.
But when you're looking at and I wanted to go back to your point too, though, like with these quarterbacks, like, Bryce, CJ, these guys here. I thought CJ looked great. I thought he threw well. I thought he could easily be QB1. Hey, that's good. Okay. But we have Geno as QB6 last year. We had Trevor Lawrence. We had Kirk Cousins as QB9. We had Jared Goff at QB10. Like, I think there's a realistic scenario where these guys could go and still be like, maybe not top 5, but they could be like legitimately Dak-ish, QB8 to 12 realistically every year. And you're like, hey, getting a good offense. So I think that's where we have to fit the narrative in, but that's where we come back to Richardson, not to keep talking about him. He could be a top 5 if everything lands right, like Jalen Hurts.
That could be the QB1, and that's important. And do you see a world in which Young or Stroud or Levis are the overall QB1 with their athletic profiles mixed with, all of their skill sets? Is there a world in which they ever finish that high?
No.
My heart says no.
Maybe.
They can't. I mean, I would be more like, if I'm going to project them, 5 to 8 would be like the ceiling. Like, okay, 5, hey, legitimate, like Justin Fields. But remember, Justin Fields was QB5 this year with his rushing upside, and he didn't throw the ball a whole lot. But even like Geno at QB6, 18 points fantasy points per game, that would be a fair assessment to me. That'd be a win for me with both these guys.
Well, and then you've got, remember too, on the landscape, you've got Caleb Williams and Drake May coming in as well. And those are going to be able to bring you those tools as well. So I think looking long-term, it's where the position is in terms of fantasy, the production. I don't see quarterback rushing going away. It's becoming more of a factor at NFL offenses, and it's been a factor in college offenses and high school offenses for a long, long time. So I don't see that going away. It's just too much of when you're playing 11 on 10, and it's just, the math equation works very well for a quarterback to run the football.
Oh, we're talking math now? I got to leave. If we talk math, I got to get out of here. I'm not allowed to talk. You guys know how I had to find out how to do target share. All right. So Bryce and CJ, are we done there? Are we good?
Yeah.
Yeah. CJ looked great. I think CJ, shout out CJ throwing well. He didn't run and do those things, but he looked really, really good there. All right. Bijan. Bijan's pretty good. Pretty good prospect. Is he still your 101? I wanted to, excuse me, can't talk. I wanted to pull up his RAS and kind of look at it overall. We saw his verticals, 40-yard dash, 4.46. He got under 4.5. That's what everybody's looking at. 20-yard split, 10-yard splits there. Is there any scenario, Jeff, where he's not the 101 in your league?
Not for me, no. I'm still going to take him the 101. I don't know. Use that pick, maybe trade back. Maybe, I mean, if you're able to trade back into the quarterback tier and get a 24 first from another bad team, quote unquote, because of the hype on Bijan Robinson, I mean, maybe that's something worth considering. But again, it's just, I don't know. I want to see where he gets drafted. If he gets drafted top 10, I'm going to feel fantastic about him. But I had an interesting exchange with Josh Larkey early, like a couple days ago on Twitter, because Josh was talking about how we in fantasy need to be devaluing the running back position because that's what's happening in the NFL. And I said, well, there's also the potential that Bijan Robinson is the Travis Kelce of the new era of running backs, where Travis Kelce's value as a tight end is so much more than relative tight ends around him, that gives you such that advantage that if committee usage becomes the landscape and you really kind of just have a handful of elite bell cow running backs that can give you that 25 point per game ceiling, 30 point per game ceiling from Christian McCaffrey we saw in the past, Bijan Robinson's the path to that, and that value becomes so much more inflated because the rest of that landscape, you'll be able to, just like tight end, you'll be able to find any running back to plug in and get 10 to 12 points, but to have those 25 points that are going to be swinging leagues, that value will increase so much. And so I think that it's one thing to consider as we see this landscape. And I think it hasn't fully taken shape yet. And we've been talking about it this offseason, but I think you're going to see still believe you're going to see some big releases, maybe some big trades. You're going to see a whole shuffle going on through free agency, through the draft. Some players that appear safe now are not going to be safe. And I think in the dynasty landscape, everybody's terrified of running backs in general right now, and you can get values on them if you're willing to make those bets. But I do think that if that landscape moves to that, if it's committee usage, then a one elite player that gives you that 25 point per game ceiling at a running back position in PPR will be Bijan Robinson, and will have that value relative to the rest of the landscape.
Yeah. Just, I mean, you keep mentioning McCaffrey, and I think that that's what we're looking at. And there was a time before McCaffrey started getting hurt a little bit where McCaffrey commanded like 3 firsts in dynasty leagues. I was actually in 2 leagues where he went for 3 firsts. So when you start talking about that, are you getting 3 firsts for the 1-on-1 this year? Probably not. You might move back a couple picks and pick up an extra first, but the only thing that can derail Bijan Robinson's value is injury. And that, I think it's worth noting that he has seen a lot of touches at the college level, and there's a higher risk of that once he does get to the NFL. But those touches have kind of proven that maybe he can stay on the field at the NFL level. So maybe you don't need to worry as much about that. So yeah, he's good though. We wrote in here good too. Yep. He's still the 101. And, that whole Anthony Richardson talk, like, I don't, even in like single quarterback leagues and things like that, you're not going for anyone over Bijan. Even the guy at wide receiver that showed out and proved that he was athletic when people said he wasn't.
See, to Jeff's point, like I saw that argument or a discourse with Larkey that you had. I think that you could have Bijan can be like an anchor running back. I think in a startups, or if you're in startups and you're looking at like Bijan, he's going to the second round. You could pair him with an elite quarterback or Fields. Like if you started Fields, Bijan, and then you just build through your wide receivers, I think that's a hell of a strategy. And because you just, plug in Bijan, have your running back 2 be your weakest team, whatever. You have Fields with the upside, and then you just have receivers. And I think that's, if you're going to go like Bijan there, like that's where you go. Like, and when you look at the landscape in itself, if you're in a startup like that, how many of you guys can you say you're comfortable doing that with? Jonathan Taylor? Maybe. Ken Walker? No. Probably not. Brees coming off an injury already, right? So when you're looking at it, like Robinson feels like the only guy that you can do that with. Otherwise, I'm just going to take a second quarterback or just build through wide receivers. Like that's kind of how I would do it. So that's value. Like that's inherent value built in. No matter what, you're going to have that guy that for the next 2 years at least, he's going to have that value there. And I think that's why you take him 1-on-1. And even if and it's not that you like trade back, you could trade back, but why not just take him anyway? He's not going to have not value. Like as you go forward to the league, like you can move him at different times. It's not like he's just going to be sitting there. So barring an injury or whatever. So, all right, let's dive over to Gibbs. So let's talk about Gibbs. Came in really. Did he come in too small, y'all? Like, what do you think? What do we do here? I want to pull it up here. Obviously his routes was fine. 40.436. This dude blazed great 40 time. He came in shorter than what he was listed, but hey, that's what it always is. 5'9". That kind of explains the weight at 199. And I know that 1 pound, guys, that 1 pound is going to hurt some people here. But what do we think of Gibbs, Jeff? How do you feel about him? Still the 104, 105? Where are you at?
Yeah, I think there's a top 6 that's pretty well solidified itself in Superflex, and I think Gibbs is certainly in there. My only question is going to be landing spot on him, and it's not so much capital. I think he's going to be either a late first or early second round pick. I just want to make sure he's in an offense that I trust that is going to use the passing element, especially in PPR formats, because I think that player comp wise, I don't think it's a good one, but maybe production wise, like an Austin Eckler type, where I think that that's going to be your path to get that 500-600 rushing yards or so, and then another 800 to 1,000 receiving yards, and stacking receptions on top of that. The comps are running rampant of Alvin Kamara, and the dude kind of looks like Alvin Kamara, and Alvin Kamara played for Alabama for a year, and they have tape on their arms, but other than that, I don't know. Maybe production-wise, you might end up in a similar place, but Kamara later in his career shifted more towards a true running back. He's a bigger guy. He handled more in between the tackles, and I don't think Jahmyr Gibbs, you're ever going to get that between the tackle work. But you do need to get that passing work and be sure that he lands somewhere that will utilize him in that area of the game.
Yeah, for that reason, I think the Chargers are my favorite landing spot for him, and it's never going to happen just with where they're picked, unless they trade back and then move on from Austin Eckler, because Eckler's getting old too. But there are a certain number of teams that if he lands with them, I'm not as interested. I think the Eagles have been a popular one. That's not a good landing spot for him. There's some touchdown upside for sure because of how dynamic that offense is, but Jalen Hurts really doesn't throw to the running backs. That is not a major piece of their game. And I know personnel dictates scheme, and they would find ways to get him the ball. It's just not, the ceiling is lowered as soon as you go to a team that's not going to utilize him like that. But it's funny, on his Georgia Tech film, he wasn't a blazer. And then he got to Alabama, he got in that weight program, he maybe cut, I'd say maybe 5 or 6, maybe up to 10 pounds. And he was breaking away all over his film. So I wasn't shocked by that number. But I was curious, and I'm glad he confirmed those priors last weekend.
Him going to Alabama was probably the best decision for him, because his body, man, looks good. Like the way he did any cut. The size of he's going to catch passes. I will say this again. If you've listened to our show for a long time, we appreciate you. I have said this multiple times. He was the best pass catcher on every college team he was on. Last year, he was the best receiver for Alabama. Best, bar none. Those receivers were, sorry, Joe, ass, right? Like, they were not good. They were not good. Gibbs was legit. They should have put him on the slot and used him. The one reason why they didn't is because he got Bryce killed all the time in pass protection. He was not good in pass protection. So Saban did not have him out there a lot because he got mad at him and he put him in the doghouse. But NFL teams are just going to be like, yeah, we don't care. Just throw the ball. Like, they're just going to give the ball in different areas. Like, he's legit. So I think that the size concerns are minimized with his ability to catch balls. Like, I think that's just number one for Gibbs. I want to go into, we're going to do JSN. I'm going to make a executive decision here just because we talk about that elite tier guys. JSN, boys, he's pretty good. On this show, we've talked about him being pretty good. Overall, he didn't run the 40, which I guess we could talk about. 6 foot 196, good size. Really, his shuttle and 3-cone were excellent. Like, when you're looking at it, just elite level kind of areas there. And then they talk about him having one of the best throwing sessions. Him and CJ look great. Separation, all the things that we say is going to be good. He's going to be a target hog. This dude's just going to catch balls. And he's excellent. I think people forgot how good he was, right, Jeff?
Yeah, they absolutely did. And a lot of what happens is people are too concerned about what players can't do. What we try to do, we try to take the approach of what players can do. And if I've got a guy that I know can do something, I love that. And, can we build on top of that? And Jackson Smith-Njigba, and really what's happening with slot usage in the NFL and those short passes, that volume in those short passes, those schemed up ability to work in the intermediate and short games. JSN is going to thrive. He's going to be excellent in that area, and that's essentially become an extension of the run game in NFL offenses now. That's a go-to that NFL offenses know that they can trust. That's going to be there. That can create yardage. That can move the chains, and he's going to be that type of player. And I think it's just really was overthinking on it, and a lot of. We've seen proof of concept. We saw proof of concept with Amon-Ra St. Brown, where there were a lot of questions about his production came when the Lions were bad, and that was the only reason why he had any production. And then this year we saw that, that's not the case at all, when defenses were certainly schemed up for him, and he was still very, very productive. And Jackson Smith-Njigba is going to be that type of player. He's going to be that type of player that teams can rely on, that will be a focal point of the offense, and the value is going to be there. And it was great to see him perform in the agility. We knew that he had the agility. That was the number one thing that showed up on tape with him, that agility, the ability to avoid big hits. And really the injury that took him out this year was kind of a freak injury. If you would have watched that play, the way he came down was just kind of a random happenstance. It wasn't so much that he took bad hits or anything like that. It just kind of player landed on him a little bit. He slid over by the sideline, and then the hamstring went. And so I think a lot of the things have been put to bed, the questions with him, and certainly he's in that tier, and anywhere I can grab him, I'm absolutely thrilled to do so.
Jeff, I'm so happy you said that we tend to focus on things that players can't do. In the discourse with my mock draft that is on the Footballguys website, go check that out. And people roasting it. That's been a common theme, is people focus on all of the things that all of the prospects can't do. One example was Nolan Smith. But with JSN, I think too, we've become so enamored with him being a slot player that we haven't considered that elite agility is going to get him open on the outside too. We just didn't have enough proof of that because he didn't get to play. And I think had he played, we would have seen him lined up on the outside a little bit more. Now, is that his best spot? Maybe not. But does he come off the field in 2 receiver sets? I also don't think that's the case. I think he can line up as a Z receiver and still win. I still think that he's going to be able to create separation. He doesn't have that breakaway speed, that pull away speed at the top of his routes. And so you're probably not running him on a ton of go routes. But man, if I'm a corner trying to, cover him on a comeback or a curl even, it's going to be difficult. And so I think that I underprojected his athleticism. I knew he was a good athlete. We've talked about that. He's just not fast. I didn't expect him to be an elite athlete in terms of his agility. I don't know if he broke receiver records, but I think that was the best agility combination in the last 5 or 6 years at the very least. So just an outstanding performance.
I love JSN. I've loved him for a long time. I just think that, when you're looking at him, he's going to do well. And honestly, like based on the receivers, to me, he's like the only locked in guy I know could probably go top 20, like to where I'm like, yeah, he'll go top 20. I feel comfortable with that and that's where that, and you guys got to remember too, at this point last year, we were hearing a lot of stuff like David Bell is the best wide receiver. And then Garrett Wilson has, struggles. And remember remember the hop after this, and then Garrett Wilson goes top 10 and David Bell barely gets drafted day 2. And so I think that's like where we got into with JSN. And I think people just outsmarted themselves. I think JSN's clearly the wide receiver 1 in this class. And that's kind of where I'm at with him. Yeah. And I've never really left. It's just that's safe. I think that he's going to test well. I thought, hey, he's going to have that. And I don't think he should run the 40. Don't even run the 40.
Never in his life.
No. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. And if a team's not going to take you because you didn't run the 40, then that's their loss, because he's going to be able to separate, do the things that you need him to do as a receiver. And that's how bad teams stay bad. And that's kind of how I look at Jason. I think he can be very solid. All right. Zach Charbonnet. Jeff, he's not Isaiah Spiller. He tested well. He got down to 214, which is important. He's going to probably play at 220 if I had to guess, but he got down to run his 40 because he's at 4.53. He probably wanted to make sure he got under 4.6, which is probably good for him. But he tested really well. 10 split looked good. Vertical looked good. Is Zach running back 3 of this class right now for you, Jeff?
Yeah, I think he solidified himself as running back 3. I think it was kind of an open field going into this, and you kind of wanted to see somebody step up a little bit. And I think that Charbonnet was that player that stepped up. I don't know. I want to feel more comfortable on where players are going to get picked. I had Zach Evans there for a long time, and realistically, the capital is just not going to be there. I would be surprised if it was now. It seems like he's really fallen off, and maybe he's the faller out of this class. Kayshon Boutte is the faller out of this class. And if you're a Debbie player, I mean, that's heartbreaking because those were big key cornerstone assets. But certainly want to see them play those bounce back. But I think Charbonnet has separated himself relative to the other players that were in consideration there for running back 3. I know Christian's probably still got a couple other guys and that running back 3 right in that range. But I think consensusly what you're seeing, and I'm comfortable being there, that Charbonnet is that running back 3. He's going to be a first round rookie pick in most any format that you're going to be in now. And that's just realistically where his value is.
Yeah, you nailed it. I have Tank Bigsby still RB3. I don't think anything about his combine was incredibly shocking. I thought that's exactly what I expected. That's kind of what I expected from Charbonnet too. And so I didn't adjust too much. I did, obviously adjust up with the relative athletic score, and Charbonnet bumped up a couple spots because other running backs didn't have the opportunity, or they didn't take advantage of the opportunity to improve on, what maybe showed up on their film. So good on Sharbs for going out there and doing that. But no, I mean, if he's going as the consensus 3 and I want to share, he's also in that tier where I'm comfortable if I have to reach and, differ from my rankings a little bit, I would do something like that because I do think that he has a skill set that's going to lend itself to good fantasy performance. So,
yeah. I'm with you on. I like Tank. I think Tank's fine. I thought Tank's overall. He's not on the show sheet. We have no time. But Tank is one of those guys I thought did really good in terms of just okay. Charbonnet though I think is running back 3. I think 4 is somewhere in that tier. He's in that same tier. I think the running back 3 is going to be preference. We still haven't seen Spears run. We still haven't seen some of these guys that maybe will come up there. But I think I like what Zach talked about when he said that he went back to school to play. To catch balls. And he did. He went back and caught more balls last year than he ever had. And he wanted to show his receiving upside there. All right. Well, we're running out of time. Jeff, why don't you pick one guy that we haven't touched on that you want to talk about?
Quentin Johnston. So TCU definitely did lie about his size. He's a 6'2". He kind of roused up to 6'3". But the athleticism was there. He didn't run, but he jumped and he showed that he has that explosion in the athleticism. And I think that's another player too that everybody. I'm seeing comps to Cordero Patterson, and Cordero Patterson didn't know how to play wide receiver, and Quentin Johnston knows how to play wide receiver. And I'm seeing complaints about everything being basket catches. And I think that there's just a lot of outthinking going on with Johnston right now. We saw him be a dominant player for several stretches, and for some reason he was just forgotten about. But I think a lot of that lands maybe on Max Duggan a little bit more than it does on Quentin Johnston's ability, because if you watch him, he was certainly open on tape. And that's a player that I don't know. I would, as he gets faded out of the top 20, you almost love it, because if Quentin Johnston's a Buffalo Bill or a Kansas City Chief, I mean, what's happening to his dynasty value there? I mean, that makes that group of 6 into a group of 7 pretty quickly.
Yeah. I was quick note on Johnston. He made one catch in the drills that was like, oh yeah, that's what we wanted to see all the time from Quentin Johnston. And it was an incredibly well-timed, high-pointed ball where he was about 40 inches off the ground. Like that's the Quentin Johnston that I think we're going to see at the NFL level, because once again, I would like to remind everyone, he was late to the wide receiver position. He played football as a kid, but he was a running back and he hit a growth spurt late. And so he transitioned to wide receiver as a junior in high school. And he was recruited, I believe, he may have gotten the wide receiver tag actually, but I mean, he was just a really great athlete. And I don't think we've seen the best out of Quentin Johnston. So yeah, I don't understand. He was my wide receiver 1. I think he doesn't have an official relative athletic score. If he runs really fast at his pro day, he's still in contention to be my wide receiver 1. Do you have anything on? I was going to pick another player, Kevin.
Good.
Really quickly.
Go.
One that you hate too, so that we can move on. Darnell Washington. Kevin is the noted hater of Darnell Washington, but Darnell Washington had a remarkable combine. I think the number one thing that stood out was him pushing the sled compared to his tight end running mates. That stuff is what will get him drafted highly. I had him go as the tight end 1 off the board in my mock, and everyone thinks I'm crazy right now, but I'm telling you, he is a 6th offensive lineman out there that can also go up and snag one-handed catches on the sideline like he did at the combine sometimes. Other times he'll drop everything. But sometimes teams don't care about that. David Njoku was a first-round pick. Evan Engram was a first-round pick. Neither of those two could catch until like year 6 in the NFL. So I think Darnell Washington had a great day.
Do you think that he's stuck as he's certainly going to be an inline tight end, but is there really any fantasy relevant passing volume potentially for Washington, or is he going to be a player that is touchdown dependent, that just kind of lands in the group of tight ends that you throw him in, maybe he catches a touchdown, maybe he catches 3 balls and for 45 yards and maybe you squeak out 13 points? Or is this a guy that can realistically get to 8 to 10 targets a game and be a focal point of a passing offense?
I mean, I think that it's going to take some time, but I think down the road he could be. He's a matchup nightmare. I mean, he is currently. I have heard Rob Gronkowski thrown out as a comp for him about 7 times since the combine from different people. I think that is what you're hoping for, because even Gronk, when he was out there, he didn't look like he was a matchup nightmare, and then he got the ball in his hands, and he was. I think that's what you're hoping for. I also think that there's a chance that he's not that. So. Take that for what it's worth.
Yeah, before I got slandered right there by Christian, I would like to say that, I think Darnell's a great tight end. I just don't know how much I like him as a fantasy asset. That's my biggest thing. And he had drop problems. In college, when there were some things about his profile, hey, concentration, stuff like that. There are some things there. I'm not ready to give my Jordan Addison spicy take yet. I'm gonna leave that as a cliffhanger for next week.
I want that.
We're gonna leave that on a hanger. We need more time for that one because I dropped it in our Discord today, but I'll leave that for another time. I'm gonna say
next week.
I'm gonna say there. So I'm gonna go. You know what? I think Michael Mayer did fine. I think Michael Mayer may not be as athletic as we think, but I don't think he tested too bad. Where you saw his 40 and everything was there. I still think he's tied in 1. There's rumors that Kincaid had really bad interviews. There's rumors that Kincaid didn't have the week that he should have had. So I still like Mayer where he's at. I think he's still top 8 guy in Dynasty, a tight end wise. I think he's there. So I'm okay with that. We'll get into some of these other guys next week. I do say I'm very, very disappointed in you, Kayshawn. Very disappointed in Kayshawn. I feel like Kayshawn showed up and was not ready to perform, and he needed to be ready to perform since last year. And I think that's a big knock on him and his profile. I saw some people arguing that he should still go 202 in rookie drafts. I'm not taking him at 202 right now. Not after that. I don't see how you can justify that, especially if Downs is there or one of these other guys or a running back in that area. Or Mayer. I don't see how you can take the risk on Kayshawn at 202.
So I did the wide receivers for the rookie guide, and we had over 50 wide receivers, and I only changed 1 comp after this weekend, and I changed Kayshon Boutt's comp to David Bell. So probably a lot of the people still think you should take him are probably people that took David Bell too.
So go buy the rookie guide when it comes out, by the way. Jeff spoiling the update of the rookie guide. Come on now. All right, let's go to the games. Can we go to the games?
Yeah, let's go.
So first up is the Jeff and Kevin game, aka the Sportsbook Rundown. I'm terrible at this. I went 3-4-3 last week, and Kevin and Jeff apparently had all the same picks and went 7-1-3. So I should have just done what they did. So I tied. This week we're picking XFL games once again. First one, DC versus Vegas. Kevin, where are you going?
DC, baby. They're undefeated. They're my team. I'm rolling with DC.
Okay, Jeff?
DC.
Yep. I mean, I just tipped my hand on what I'm doing in this game, so DC it is. Next one, Arlington against St. Louis, Jeff.
St. Louis fighting AJ McCarron's.
Yep. Kevin, you go next. No, I'm just kidding. St. Louis. Kevin, where you go?
St. Louis all day. St. Louis.
Okay, cool. Houston versus Orlando. I'm gonna go with Houston. Kevin.
We have one rule on the on this show now. Go Houston. Go against Orlando. Always go against Orlando. Never pick Orlando on this in the XFL.
Yeah, Jeff.
Houston, obviously.
That would have been really funny if you picked Orlando. San Antonio versus Seattle is the
This is a
last
tough
game that
one.
we're picking. It is. Kevin.
This is what's going to separate us right here. I'm going to go Seattle. I'm going to go the Ben DiNucci's.
Okay. Jeff?
I wanted to take Seattle, and I'll make Seattle my official team of the XFL.
Do it.
But you pick first. I'm going to take Seattle because, I'll just tie you this week.
And I'll take San Antonio because we can't have all of the same picks. And this is what I do every week, and that's why I lose. And that'll do it for the Sportsbook Rundown, a.k.a. the Jeff and Kevin game.
I will say, if you want to win some money, you could tell us. And watch, this is the week we're going to go 1-3 in the XFL. But we've been pretty on in the XFL content over here. All right, we're going to go a little prospect poker, get you out of here. But we're going to talk about, there's not a lot to talk about, guys. We're in the off season, not a lot of over-unders to talk about. So we're going to go Players Championship of golf. We have a little fun on this show. We like talking about some of this stuff. We're going to go over-under on the Player Championship, the first round. You can find these out there. And we'll go through. So on the props so far this offseason, Jeff's 6-4. I don't know who won last week because they didn't put that. I am 5-4-1. Christian's 6-3-1. So Christian, this is Christian's game right now. He has a higher win percentage than we do. So Christian, what are you going over this weekend for the Players Championship?
Jordan Spieth over 71.5 strokes. I believe this is just the first round number, right?
Yes.
Okay. I just picked it, and I don't know much about golf because I don't watch all that often. But Jordan Spieth choked last week. I do know that, so I'm going over.
Hurt his back, maybe or maybe not. So we've got a 2 of diamonds, a 6 of spades, and an 8 of clubs showing right now. And Christian's going to turn up a 7 of hearts, which would be cool with the 6 and 8, but he certainly can't get it straight with a 2. I'm going to go with Tony Finau over 71. And I don't know anything right now, but I'm just going to go with Tony Finau over. And that's going to be my pick. An ace of hearts, which is nice.
I'm so glad you said that because I'm going to clip that and play it anytime you argue with me. I don't know anything right now. That's what I'm doing. I'm going to go Tyrell Hatton over 71.5. Not playing well right now. Not hitting his irons well.
10 of hearts.
Actual analysis. Can you also give some for my pick of Jon Rahm under 70.5 strokes?
Very good. He's very good. Jon Rahm is very good.
Bang.
4 of spades. You got nothing. I've got Scotty Scheffler. Always bet on Scotty Scheffler. Shout out to my dear friend Steffi, and she always says every week, bet on Scotty Scheffler, and I do it every week, and it's working out pretty well for me. And I got a Queen of Hearts.
I'm gonna go our bad boy Max Homa. He's played pretty well in terms of recently. He likes this kind of venue under 7.5. I'll take that.
A 6 of
pair
clubs.
Of sixes.
Pair of sixes. That means Kevin wins that show or that game. Kevin's got 1.5. I have half, and Christian's kind of trailing. So, Christian, it's been good knowing you tonight, but it's not going to be Christian's show tonight. Christian is going to start us off. We're going to play blackjack. The way we play blackjack is we play trivia with blackjack. We hit, you get a trivia question, you get it right, you get a good outcome, you get it wrong, you get a bad outcome. Christian starts us off with a 10, so that's a good little turn for Christian. Kevin has a 13 showing, and I have a 6 showing. So we need some trivia questions.
Kevin, do you have any?
Yeah, I got one this is for Christian though. So this is so these are team themed questions. So what team you like. So I came prepared today. So Christian is a Bears fan now. So I went with the Bears. Christian, on the Bears roster, who do you think has the highest RAS score?
On the current roster?
If you want me to tell you offense,
Kyler Gordon.
Kyler Gordon. No, he's in the top 10. Chase Claypool.
Oh, I forgot he was a Bear because he was so terrible.
He had a 9.98. And then it was St. Brown.
Oh, wow. Yeah, okay. Yeah, well, I didn't bust. Jeff, do you have a question for me? I'll just
Who is leading the XFL in passing yards?
AJ McCarron.
No, Ben DiNucci.
Oh, man. We talked about 2 XFL quarterbacks on this show, and I picked the wrong one. All right. We'll say I busted.
Okay. All right. Well, it's my turn now. Christian, you have a question?
I do. So this weekend is the Oscars. So I came with some Oscars trivia, and I'll go with kind of an easy one. Over under 25 How many times has Steven Spielberg been nominated for an Academy Award?
Over.
It's actually under 22 times. I set the line pretty tight, but he hasn't won in a very long time. So
Okay. Why didn't bust?
I
Is he
gotcha.
gonna win this time?
yeah. Do you have another question, Kevin?
Yeah, I got you. You just ignored Jeff, but it's cool.
What
All right.
did you say he's gonna? Is he gonna win?
Yeah, I asked you, is he gonna win this time?
Oh, probably not.
I don't
Probably
know
not.
anything about
No.
movies, so
This is
It's a bummer.
riveting content.
I
All right,
know,
let's
we're
we're losing viewers
right
right now, but that's what we do here. We just lose viewers. Before you leave us, can you please like and hit the like button? Okay, like just hit like the previous 50 minutes because we appreciate all you guys watching us. Like don't waste us now. Who has the highest RAS score currently? That's currently on the roster, Jeff, on the Bills.
Is Tremaine Edmonds still currently on the roster?
Yeah, he's fourth. Close. Von Miller.
Von Miller. He's a good player. I busted. Kevin wins.
Kevin wins. That's great. I was running out of questions, so I only asked one. So there we go.
Oh, man, I was not prepared to be here tonight, but I should be like an Oscar speech here. No, I think the biggest thing I wanted to highlight is the Rookie Guide 2.0. I mean, we spent a lot of time on that for here, Football Guys. We had a good run out for the first version. This one is a paid version, but I think it's worth it. I think it provides value to your leagues, especially with the other additions that we're doing. And you really should sign up for Football Guys and get a membership, and you won't be disappointed. There's so many good things and so many great people at Football Guys. Even as a person who works there, I am amazed by how many great people we have and just all the information that you can get to help you win your fantasy leagues. And I think we pride ourselves on that, and we truly do care. Every piece of content that we create, it takes a long time, whether it's mocks or rookies or this guide. This guide collectively, me and Jeff Christian have worked on this thing for hours, and we're diving into it, and we're going to make the third version even better. So there's a lot out there. Go look at it. Go see, think what when it gets released this week, let us know what you think. And we're doing it, and it's well worth the money. Just the guide itself, I think, is worth the money. And you get all the other tools. It's the best deal in fantasy, in my opinion. So go take a look. Look in the description below. You can find it. You're going to be able to find the Football Guys subscription. Go get it. And you won't be disappointed. If you haven't gotten the first version, go check that out, and then go get the second one once it comes out and say, man, I really like this. And then you're going to be blown away by the third one. And that's a guarantee for me.
Well said.
All right. We'll be back next week, March 15th, 9 p.m. Eastern, like always. Until then, I'm Kevin Coleman.
I'm Jeff Bell.
And I'm Christian Williams, and you just watched the Football Guys College Football Show.